Coming up on episode 376 of Wheel Bearings, we got the Honda Prologue Elite and the Odyssey, people being burned alive in Teslas. Honda has a new Passport, and Acura's got a new ADX. Tesla is the deadliest car brand in America. Tests of a catalytic converter heat shield. Dodge is accelerating production of new gas-powered chargers. We got first images of the new electric Jaguar GT. GM cutting a bunch of jobs. Lexus adding a cheaper RZ, and Jose Munoz gets the global top job at Hyundai Motor Company. All that and more coming up next. This is episode 376 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Abuel-Salmon from Guidehouse Insights.
And I am Nicole Wakeland from CarBuzz.
And Robbie just pinged us about half an hour ago to let us know that he made the mistake of getting the chicken sandwich at the gas station on his way home from the shows that he was doing the last couple of nights with his OMD band. And thus he is not quite at feeling up to sitting around and chatting for a couple of hours.
One should always be cautious with gas station food, people.
You know, when you go into a gas station, stick to the stuff that's in packages like chips, Snickers bars, Reese's peanut butter cups.
Things that have been prepackaged by somebody not at the gas station.
Yeah, unless it's if it's been extremely highly processed and packaged and will basically last forever.
Yeah.
That's well, I mean, not to say that stuff is ever good to eat, but it's probably at least not going to make you immediately sick.
Better for you than whatever it was that Robbie chose to eat today. Let's say that.
Yeah. Stay away from the gas station sushi and the chicken sandwiches.
Yes, absolutely. So
the hot dogs might be okay.
I don't know. They're on those roller things forever.
Yeah. They're on those rollers and they've been cooking for days and days, so
endless days at a high heat.
That should probably kill any bacteria that's in there. But even that, probably best to just take a pass.
Probably.
Yeah. All right. So what have you been driving?
I've been driving ye olde Honda Odyssey. I've been living the minivan life. I will say I've never been a big fan of minivans, but I do like the Honda Odyssey. Like, I'm anti-minivan just because.
This, by the way, is a woman, who drove around her young kids in a Dodge Charger.
I did. So, take that for what it's worth. I'm like, I'm not driving my kids around in a minivan. So I have the Honda Odyssey, and this year, not a lot changes, but there are little changes. It sort of gets like a styling update. So it looks a little bit fancier. I mean, I don't think you're going to notice the styling changes unless you're some kind of, I don't know, raging Honda Odyssey fanboy. Does that exist?
I'm sure there's somebody out there.
Somebody
who fits that description.
But yeah.
And if you are that person, please let us know.
Let us know. I think the coolest thing about it, and I had to look, the vertical rear bumper reflectors were taken from the Acura NSX.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the coolest part about the outside. That I guess that makes your minivan cooler. So that's outside. So outside still looks good. The Odyssey looks like a minivan. It's a nice looking minivan. Inside, they did a couple of new things. There's a standard 7-inch digital instrument cluster. And of course, you can configure it to show the information you want to show. There's a 9-inch infotainment touchscreen, which honestly feels small these days. Like, given how some of them are 10.
It is. But the Odyssey is also getting a little long in the tooth.
Right. So I'm thinking this is what you get until it's an all new, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, it does. I mean, it works fine. It's not like it's a 5-inch screen or something, but it seems small given especially larger vehicles with, it's a big open space in the front of a minivan. And suddenly that screen looks really small. But they also upped the screen size for the rear entertainment system. It's one of the ones that flips down from the ceiling, from the roof, and it's 12.8 inches. Woohoo.
I remember when the previous generation Odyssey debuted, and that one was interesting because they that rear seat entertainment screen that flips down from the roof was actually a double wide screen.
Yes.
So that two people sitting in the back seat could be watching different things on the same screen at the same
I
time. So
forgot about that. Yeah.
one half of the screen could display one thing, the other half could display something else, and then each person using the wireless headphones could listen to their own thing and watch their own thing.
Could be entertained. No, now it's just the one screen in the ceiling, so that's all you get. It is still
Yeah,
pretty big. I mean, it's bigger than the screen you get for infotainment up front, which is I don't know, weird. I feel like it's more important infotainment be big enough that you can see what you're doing than your kids watching Minions or whatever they've chosen to watch in the back of the car. So those are the new things. So it's not like it's like drastically changed. Little changes this year. Inside there's seating for 8. It has a really neat second row. I like how they do this. So it's technically a bench, but it's not really. It's kind of like two sort of kind of captain's chairs with a chair in the middle. It looks like one bench seat, but you can pull out that middle seat and now you do have like captain's chairs. They even have little armrests that come down. And then it has this neat feature where you can't they slide, but it's not just sliding it forward and back so that you can give, if you want more cargo room, you can move them forward, or if you wanted more leg room, you could move them back. It also slide left, right. So you can move the kids a little bit further apart if you need to, if they're, fussing and fighting or having an issue, but you can also move them closer together, which the kind of neat thing about that, if you're moving them closer together, then you can also, now you've created a little bit more of a pass through sort of on one side of things. So if you wanted something larger, I don't know, you have 2x4s that you are trying to put through from the back, you have space on the side if you wanted to keep the kids together and keep like cargo to the other side, which is kind of neat. So I do like how they do that, and they're comfortable seats. A straight up bench seat is never super comfy. The fact that these are, I feel like they're bench seats only. They're pretending they're really captain's chairs with a third seat in the middle, and the third row, it's fairly roomy. It's not the roomiest third row you're ever gonna find, but it is okay. That's never really where you wanna sit in a car in a minivan, but they do recline nicely. Like, I was playing around with moving the seats around, and they really recline. So if you were an adult and you just wanna take a nap while, like, your spouse drives and the kids are all go hop in the third row and take a little nap because they really recline. Um,
take out that middle part of the second row, recline the third row, stretch your legs out in between.
Yeah, and you got
There you
plenty of
go.
room. So, and I do have a little comparison. So, in terms of just the leg room in the third row, for the Honda Odyssey is 38.1 inches. The Toyota Sienna comes in a little higher at 38.7. The Pacifica goes the other direction with 36.5.
Ooh,
Yeah, right?
that's not great.
I know. So, but it's so the Sienna, and you're talking zero point 0.6 inches of difference, Sienna and Odyssey. So both of those have a lot of room. The Pacifica, not so much. But the rest of it, the other measurements, like the second row room is pretty darn close between the first row room. It's pretty close. It's just that third row. So if you want that extra room, go with the Odyssey or the Sienna because you really do get a bit more space in it. There's also, and I played around with this, and Russ is like, "What the heck?" So they have that. I just forgot the exact phrase, but it's that you can talk, cabin talk. Sorry, cabin talk,
Mm.
which I refer to as the voice of God. So you can
Yes.
make it so that if you're trying to talk to your kids, if they're in the second row or even the third row, and they either A, don't hear you because they're bickering and you're trying to get them to quiet down, or B, hear you and are completely ignoring you because what are you going to do? You're driving the car, push this little button, and your voice comes through the speakers, and it's like, quiet down. And you can hear it. It's funny. As the person driving, you can hear that your voice is coming now also from behind you. So it's kind of funky, but that's kind of a neat feature, I think, so the kids can still hear you and they know that they're like, okay, mom is still paying attention. She can still hear you from the front of this. You can't just mess around and do whatever you want to do. Like, you can't get away with stuff. It also has a good amount of cargo room in it. So again, I had a little chart that I popped up, and behind the third row, it's about the same. And why that matters is if you're not popping the seats up and down all the time, if you're generally like carpooling and you've got more than, 2, 3, 4 kids in the car, you're probably leaving that third row up, and it's just that's you're throwing the groceries or book bags or whatever. It's 32.8 cubes in the Odyssey, 33.5 in the Sienna, and 32.3 in the Pacifica. So they're all pretty close, right? Pretty close.
Hmm.
When you get
Yeah.
to the room behind the first row, and I swear I've looked up this number and I'm going to have to double check it again because I just don't believe it. But the Odyssey comes up with 140.7 behind the first row. The Pacifica comes up with 140.5. And in what I'm convinced is a typo in the release I'm looking at, 101, 100 in the Sienna. So something where I'm looking at, there's a release that's wrong. So I'm gonna take the Sienna out because that can't be the right thing. And I've double checked two different spots. I'm like, there's something I'm missing. I'm looking at a different SAE measurement or something. You know what I mean? One's doing something different from the other.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely not 40 cubic feet of
Right?
difference
So I'm
between
not
those
sure
three
what's happening, but
vehicles.
you can see if you look just at Odyssey and Pacifica, 140.7, 140.5, your net is going to be pretty darn close to the same overall. So, if you're looking, and the thing that makes the minivans nice is they're not, you have that nice comfort thing where you can have all the kids and have all their stuff. You can get super comfy in there and you have plenty of room for everybody. Then you can morph it and you can carry cargo, and you can carry a lot of cargo. Like if you put those seats down, you have tons of cargo room. And because it's just this, my friend always used to say that minivans look like giant whales because it's just giant whale, just giant blob. You can fit really big stuff in there. It's not like this tiny little lift gate that you have to worry about, or that it's narrow, or that it's sort of sloped at the top, or the angle's weird so you can't get big stuff in there. You can throw a ton of stuff into the back of a minivan. They are fabulous for moving cargo. So if you're doing the whole shuffling kids around town thing during the week, and on the weekend you got a project you need to do, or you got to bring stuff to the dump or whatever, they're so good at doing that double duty of being fabulous for you and the kids and being fabulous for moving stuff around, which I think is part of what their appeal is, even though they're no longer like cool. I think once upon a time were they cool?
Uh, Late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. So it's been a few since minivans were cool. So, I guess it's a little cooler. Maybe a little cooler. So in terms of powertrain, nothing changes this year. That's same old, same old. It's a 3.5 liter V6, 280 horsepower, 263 pound-feet of torque. You get a 10-speed automatic. It's front-wheel drive only. So if you are somewhere where winter weather is an issue and that's a priority for you, that's the reason not to get the Odyssey. You can get the Sienna and the Pacifica both do have all-wheel drive. So, plan accordingly, especially if you're going to be driving the kids to school, which means you're going to be driving through snow some point if you live in New England or where you are, Sam, in Michigan. It's fine to drive. I mean, it's really a pleasant car to drive. It's not overly powered. It's not something that's super aggressive, but it is more than capable of getting out of its own way. It has enough to accelerate hard onto the highway. You get up to speed and you need to pass a slow poke, you can still do that. So it's pleasant to drive. It's not overly engaging. It has that minivan, like minivans are not made to be sports cars. They're not. It's not all about the drive. It's about getting stuff done, getting your kids where they need to go, getting cargo where it needs to be, doing that family road trip, and that's exactly what the Odyssey does, and it's really good at it. So sportiness, really engaging drive, don't get a minivan, period. Like any of them, just don't get a minivan. It's not the Odyssey, it's minivans. One of the things you don't also can't get in the Odyssey is there's no hybrid. So that actually can, like from a fuel economy point of view, it's not the best. So where it gets 22 miles per gallon combined, the Sienna with front wheel drive is 36, with all wheel drive is 35. And the Pacifica, which has a plug-in hybrid, it's 30 miles combined, and there's a 32-mile all-electric range. So in terms of fuel economy, if that's a super big priority, if it's not just you're hauling your kids little short stops all over town, but you are hauling them several towns over, or you're doing a lot of family road trips, consider carefully, because that's the kind of thing that will creep up on you and suddenly your budget is much higher because you've been spending much more on gas. So something to consider if you're getting the Odyssey. So I think a little bit what you were saying, Sam, like we need an all new Odyssey coming. It's time. This is still a great minivan. It still looks good. It's nice to drive. It does all the minivan stuff. And in terms of pricing, there's only four trims. You're starting at just under 41,920, going up to the Elite at $50,880. That is without destination. What do you think? Just you're going to win. What do you think destination is?
I'm going to take a wild guess and say 1395.
You did not just guess that. Did you? That's
I
exactly what
did.
you
I
did.
did just guess that.
Wow, spot on. Do you have a Honda this week? Did you cheat?
I did well, I didn't cheat. I didn't look at what it is for this car because it's not necessarily always the
Oh,
same for
you do have a Honda.
every
Don't
model,
cheat it.
but I did have a Honda, and it just happens to have the same delivery charge.
Okay, so 13.95, which I feel like that's not crazy. I mean, that's and, like,
Yeah.
right? Isn't that about
I mean, when you consider that, full size pickups, they're now and larger SUVs, they're now charging you $2,000 or more in some cases, like the Silverado and Sierra EVs, I think are like 22 or 2,300 bucks
right?
for delivery.
Yeah.
So
It's over
these
2,000, I think, for this Sierra.
yeah
Yeah, it is definitely over 2. So for the Sierra EV, it's like $2,000. That's a
yeah.
lot.
Interestingly, in your comparisons, you didn't mention the Kia Carnival,
I didn't. You know
which
what? I just happened to pick I always pick
which
2, and I happened to not pick the Carnival because, it's really not a minivan, um
it's an
it's
MPV.
an MPV, thank you. It's a multi-purpose vehicle. And I'm like, "Okay, you wanna be something not a minivan? I won't be with minivans."
But, the Carnival also offers a hybrid this year.
It does.
Got a refresh. So the Odyssey is the only minivan or minivan-like vehicle in the US market that doesn't have an electrified powertrain
Which
option.
is kind of a big deal, not like because really, you drive a lot when you have kids, like, you truly do. I remember when the girls were little, and I felt like, there was a dance class, there was a sporting thing, there was horseback riding, oh, you have to go for a music lesson, you're meeting with a friend, oh, it's a birthday. You run all over the place with those kids after school, and during the summertime, there's lots of day trips, you go out with friends, you're going to the beach for the day, you're going to the mountains for a day. You do a lot of driving in short stints even when the kids are little, much less the long, let's go away for the weekend, let's go away for Thanksgiving or Christmas kind of things, revisit family. That gas budget, I mean, I traded cars when the kids were small because my gas was too expensive in the car I originally had. Just because I'm like, I can't take it. The fuel bill is too much. That's like a big ding against the Odyssey is the fact that it doesn't give you that option.
Which is unusual for a Honda.
Right?
That it's the least efficient model in the segment. But as we said, the Odyssey, will is due for a redesign
Right.
of some sort. And given that Honda has been putting hybrids into many of its other vehicles in the last couple of years, I would expect the next generation will also have a hybrid option.
That and I think the same thing. I think we're just sort of in this slightly in between where they haven't gotten there yet. It's like, we'll hold that thought. We will fix this, in another when is it due? Do you know when it's due for its next all new? Because
I, I don't know, but at CES this year, they showed those two Zero Series concepts, the Saloon,
Mhm.
and the other one, I forget what it called it, but it was a van-like vehicle. So
Very
perhaps
ago.
the next gen Odyssey will be electric.
Maybe.
Who knows?
And by the way, I am right now because I'm just like double checking for the 18th time the 2025 Sienna. I'm looking at the product information on Toyota's website and the cargo behind third, second, first row 33.5, 75.2, 101. I don't get it.
Yeah, that
I don't
doesn't
get
make
it. So
sense.
it's not making sense to me. So I'm staring at this. I'm like, I'm going to check one more time. That's what it says, which doesn't say, so I feel like there's some weird, sometimes there's measurements, like not every company measures things the same. Like, what was the thing with towing? What is it? J2807 or whatever.
Something like
Right.
that.
So there's
Yeah.
an official Society of Automotive Engineers measurement that they use so that it's consistent. So that because there was an inconsistency in how things are measured, I can't figure out why this is so low. This seems wrong to me.
Let me see. Okay. Um,
And I'm staring at it right now.
yeah, I'm looking up the 2023, which was the same
And what
vehicles.
does it
It's
say
the
on that
current
one?
generation.
That's a good
See, the same thing. Cargo behind first row, 101 cubic feet. That cannot be right.
right. I'm baffled. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, that just okay. That's
Um, do the second row seats come
I'm
out of the
wondering if the
Sienna?
seats will they fold they stow in the they don't
They don't have the stow and go like Chrysler.
Chrysler has stow and go, but they don't have stow and go in the Odyssey either. They kind of fold into sort of the floor. Like they have this weird fold, like you pull it
I don't know.
through.
We'll have to check with Toyota
It's perplexing me, so I'll see
and
what I can find out.
get back
So
to that
it
next
really
week.
says 100.1, but that just seems bizarre. So I'll fire off an email and ask them.
Yeah. Also, I just noticed the oil recommends 0W16 for the Sienna, which is a really odd rating that I have never heard of before. Usually the oil viscosity, that oil rating is for the viscosity, how thick the oil is.
Right.
And, in
0
recent years, they've been going to lower and lower viscosity to reduce the friction. And usually those are, in increments of 5, like a 0W20 or 25 or 30, or
I
15.
found it
But
though, 0W16,
yeah, I've never
advanced
seen that
fuel
never noticed
synthetic
that before.
motor oil, according to Valvoline.
Very odd.
It's their 2 times stronger protection against engine-killing contaminants. I don't yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's oddness afoot about the Sienna.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely have to double check on that
Yeah,
with Toyota.
I'll ask. So yeah, so I enjoy driving it. I like it, but I just feel like it needs it's ready for an update. It's ready to get a little attention.
Okay. All right. Well, uh one other thing about minivans
Yeah,
that is an advantage. They tend to have a lower floor than SUVs, which when, going back to what you're saying about loading big stuff in there,
right.
makes it a lot easier to load big stuff in there when you've got a lower load floor.
It
If
all
you've got to
yeah,
lift stuff up over, if you got a high riding SUV and you got to load stuff up over that bumper, that's a real hassle.
yeah. It
And
also makes it
so,
really easy for kids to climb inside when kids because sometimes kids are old enough to, like, climb up to the seat and buckle, but if you have a
mhm,
huge step up for an SUV, it's a huge step up, you know what I mean? That's a big step.
yep.
So and also opening the doors in a minivan, the doors, especially if you can just grab the little handle, whoosh, they slide open. Also, a lot of older people, like seniors, or people with
Mhm.
mobility issues, just like bad knees or something, they like SUVs, minivans, because it gives you, again, the space for cargo and people, but it's so low. It's much easier to step into than it is to step into an SUV. So it's not always for people who have kids. Sometimes it's for people who are a little bit more mature and have bad knees.
Well, I also, very, very odd that Honda in the press release for this year's Odyssey, with the slight refresh they did, that they actually chose to highlight that they're using the same vertical reflectors from the second gen NSX.
And literally that's in the press release. I'm like, that
Yeah,
I'm not just like, I didn't just pull that out and go, hey, I recognize those. It's in the
yeah,
release.
yeah. That is a really weird thing to highlight. No, we're not using the engine or the brakes or any of the cool stuff from the NSX. We're just using these two little
Just these
reflectors.
2 little bits. This is it. These 2 little reflectors, just these 2 bits. We're like, we have extras. Let's toss them on the Odyssey.
Yeah. All right. Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. So I had a different Honda, a very different Honda,
Mhm.
which in fact is not actually built by Honda.
Mhm.
It's built at General Motors Ramos plant in Mexico, where they also build Blazer EVs and Equinox EVs and gas Blazers and Chevy Blazers, or yeah, Blazers and Equinox. And this is the Prologue, one of two EVs launched by Honda this year. For one for Honda, one for Acura. The Acura gets the ZDX, that are based on GM's current, new generation EV platform, and both of them ride on the same wheelbase, was it, I think 119-inch wheelbase from the that is used for the Cadillac Lyriq and the Chevy Blazer EV.
Mhm.
But the Prologue is sort of a mishmash between parts from the Blazer and parts from the Equinox EV. So it's available as either front wheel drive. It's available in 3 trim levels: EX, Touring, and Elite. The EX and the Touring are available as either front wheel drive or all wheel drive, and the Elite is all wheel drive only. Uh, and so it uses the lower performance motors. So the both all of them get a 212 horsepower front drive motor, which is the same motor that is used for the front drive, the front axle on the Lyric and the ZDX. And then they add a less powerful rear motor to give a total of 288 horsepower on the for the all-wheel drive. And the rear motor, the front motor is a permanent magnet motor. The rear motor is an induction motor that is less expensive, and it's basically configured so that it's even with all-wheel drive, it's configured like most all-wheel drive vehicles, in combustion vehicles with transverse engines, that are basically front drive, where it's primarily front drive all the time. So the front wheels are always driving, and then when it detects some slip and needs a little bit of extra traction, it triggers the rear motor to provide a little bit of extra grip, a little bit of extra performance. So it's predominantly front drive, even when it's in all-wheel drive mode. And 288 horsepower, 333 pounds-feet of torque. It's adequate for the size of the vehicle. Like like all of GM's current generation EVs, it's a little on the porky side in terms of weight,
The poor
although it's actually quite a bit lighter than the Blazer, even though it's the same overall length, same wheelbase. The 112 or 119-inch wheelbase, or sorry, 121-inch wheelbase, which is a really long wheelbase from that's used for the Blazer and the ZDX and the Lyric. Um, so the base, the EX front wheel drive is 4,932 pounds. The Elite, which is what I was driving, is 5,273. And there's a number of things that they did to make this significantly lighter than a Blazer. For one, in addition to the motors, the drive motors, it's also got a lower capacity battery. So it's an 85 kilowatt hour battery, compared to the 101, 102 kilowatt hour battery that's used on the ZDX and the Blazer and the Lyric. So basically, what this is, it's the same battery pack size, the same casing, but it only has 10 modules of cells in it, whereas the others have 12 modules. So it's got the same capacity as the Equinox, although the Equinox is, instead of having empty space in the case where they left out two modules, the Equinox, because it has a shorter wheelbase, has a actually slightly smaller battery pack. The casing is smaller. So 85 kilowatt hours, which is a still pretty good sized battery. It's rated for the EX front wheel drive is rated at 296 miles of range for the EPA test. The Touring all wheel drive is 281 miles, and the Elite, which gets 21-inch wheels instead of the 20s on the others, is 273 miles, which is still a very good range. Not it's not tremendous, but it's good, and it'll meet pretty much everybody's needs.
Mhm.
Um, because of the smaller battery pack, and the way that's configured, it also charges slightly slower than the ZDX and the Lyric and the Blazer. So instead of 190 to 200 kilowatts charging, it maxes out at about 150 kilowatts, which again, it's good, not great,
Mhm.
but it's decent. Um, I personally like the design of the Prologue. Probably it's the cleanest of the bunch. I think it's a good design. Nothing ostentatious, but it's got good proportions. It looks actually sportier than it is, because it's got a fairly wide stance. It and like the Blazer, it is a little on the wide side.
Mhm.
And if you're driving on narrow roads, that you've got to be cognizant of that. But the overall proportions I think are really good, and it's a good clean Honda design. Not I wouldn't call it's some of the more recent Hondas been a little on the boring side
Uh-huh.
in terms of design. This is I wouldn't call it boring, but it's not as over the top as the Blazer
Do
is.
you know what
Uh,
they technically call the design, excuse me, in the press release?
uh, I
I
I've heard
found
it.
it.
I can't remember though.
Neo Rugged.
Neo rugged.
Neo Rugged,
Mm,
which I
okay.
don't know I'm like that okay, I'm not really entirely sure what that means, but okay, I'll give it to you. Neo Rugged,
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, this is not an off-road SUV.
That's the thing,
Uh,
like Neo Rugged? Rugged?
eh,
Neo?
eh,
Okay, rugged?
eh. I mean, it is new,
Yeah,
so
but
Neo
Neo
fits.
works,
I'm
yeah.
not sure about the rugged
It
part.
does look good though, I agree
Um,
with you, I like how it looks, so
so it's definitely purely an on-street vehicle. You're not going to go off-roading with this
no.
thing. It doesn't have the ground clearance. Certainly doesn't have the tires that you would want for off-roading. Um, but one of the other ways that they managed to cut down on weight is by keeping the content to a manageable level and avoiding things like excess soft touch surfaces and padded surfaces, because padded surfaces do add weight, and a not insignificant amount of weight. So you know things like the center console are hard plastics.
Yeah.
When you get in this thing, if you've been in any recent generation GM vehicles, you will recognize a lot of the interior bits. There's a lot of stuff that is straight out of the GM parts bin, like the column shifter is straight out of a lot of recent GM vehicles. Which, nothing wrong with that. It's good. um, you know uh, if you're going to have an electronic shift mechanism, then you might as well put it on the column. Don't even bother with buttons on the console, or a shift lever or anything like that. Just go ahead and put it on the column, and that's what GM's doing on all their EVs, and that's what's on here. Um, and also, one thing that you will, if you've driven any GM vehicles, you will also be familiar with where the windshield wiper controls are. They are on the turn signal stock, not in the usual place where you would find them on a Honda or many other vehicles,
Mhm.
as a stock on the right hand side of the steering column. So it's on the left hand side on the turn signal. So that means you can't do things like, if it's kind of drizzly, as it was, part of the time when I was driving it, um, you know, just doing a single tap, tap the column or tap the stock, to get a single swipe of the wiper. You've got to rely on the intermittent wiper for that. And it also means that things like the volume controls and the forward and back controls for the audio are buttons on the back side of the steering wheel. They're not on
Mm.
the front side of the steering wheel. Um, Also, there is the regen on demand paddle on the left hand side behind the steering wheel. So if you want to crank up the regen for one pedal driving, you can do that with the paddle on the left hand side. Um, Nothing, I have no particular objection to most of this stuff. And there are some aspects, of what they took from GM that in some ways actually make this slightly better for Honda. Like last week, I was driving the Civic Hybrid, and the Civic Hybrid, this year got a new Android Automotive based infotainment system. One of the things that Honda's implementation of this doesn't give you is a multi-pane view, so you
Mm.
can have navigation and a media player up on the screen at the same time. You have to toggle back and forth like you do with Toyota's infotainment system. Because this is based on a GM vehicle and GM software, it does get a separate, distinct skin. A Honda designed skin, so it looks very similar to what you get in the Accord and the Civic and other Hondas that have the Android system, but it's it's based on GM's implementation of this. So there is a button on the screen that you can tap that goes from all nav or all media player to a dual window view that shows you the nav and the media player on the screen at the same time, so you can see that. Also, you can have the navigation show up in the instrument cluster, and that that works quite well. Um, there is a bit more piano black on here on the dashboard than I would like, and on
There's a
the door armrests,
Yeah, I agree.
which is to say, there is piano black, and any amount of piano black is too much piano black. Um, so you do get all the fingerprints on those surfaces if you touch them. Fortunately, it's a relatively, except for the door armrests, it's a relatively narrow strip across the dash, and mostly, in the places where you're actually going to touch, which is in the center where you've got the climate controls, physical climate controls. By the way, you don't have to touch a touch screen.
Mhm.
There's knobs to control the temperature, and you can select the different modes, the defoggers and stuff, with switches right on the dashboard there. So that's very nice.
Mhm.
Um, the overall layout of the interior is good, very clean, very Honda. And as long as you don't mind seeing some GM parts in there, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, I liked it. I had this not long ago. I had the Prologue, so I thought so I've kind of recently experienced the same thing, and I pretty much agree with you. I thought it was it was a weird I think, and, I think only you and I or people who drive all the cars will notice this, but you're like, "Wait, what am I in?" Like, it's not always
Yeah,
Honda E. You're like, "Wait, this is not a Honda control surface. What's happening here?" So, it throws you every now and then, but I'm sure that
especially when you jump from one Honda into the Prologue.
yeah, you're like, "Why is this Honda not like the other Honda? What's happening?" But it is
Yeah.
something that literally you and I and other journalists are the only one who are ever really gonna see that. I think they did it, it's a little odd, and I did hate the piano black. I'm not a fan because the minute you sit down, like, dust and fingerprints, and it scratches easy. Like,
Hmm.
it always and, like, our models that we drive, Sam, do not generally have a ton of miles on them, even when they're, like, not long for this world and they've, run through the press corps.
Yeah, I mean, if we get a car with 10,000 miles on it, I mean, that thing is
That's
ancient.
ancient, right? But still, you look at the piano black when it's on the center console, and it looks vaguely like someone's taken a wire brush to it, and, like, like, you always see scratches on it.
Yeah.
Always. It's always really I'm thinking, gosh, in everyday life, if you had that for you're driving that all the time and out of your car, throwing things across the seat, whatever, it's like, "Oh, it's just stop using it. Just stop it, guys. Don't put it on surfaces where it's gonna get scratched. Don't."
Yep. Um, the one of the advantages of having that really long wheelbase is you have a lot of room in the back seat. The back seat is very roomy,
Mhm.
and also good amount of cargo space in the back as well. And in the back, underneath, if you lift up the rear cargo floor, there's another nice deep bin underneath as well. So there's lots of cargo space, which is great,
Mhm.
because there is no front trunk, despite having a relatively long hood. This again is part of that GM lineage there. But overall, I generally like driving it. It doesn't feel particularly sporty. Like the um, like the and this particular drivetrain configuration is what GM refers to as e all wheel drive. So they have the e all wheel drive, which is this you know dominant front motor, smaller rear motor setup, and then they have other all-wheel drive systems that are more powerful on the rear axle, like you have in the Lyric and the Blazer RS. Or the SS, you'll be able to get that where and on the ZDX, where that those are more fun to drive aggressively, because they're rear biased. You can get the back end to come around a little bit with the accelerator pedal. So they're a little more fun to drive. This is more than adequate
Mm.
in terms of performance. Efficiency was okay. I averaged about 2.8, 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour, and it was relatively cold, and a lot of rain during the time I had it. So I was using the defoggers and things like that, using heat. So it was, you know, given that I was using some of the climate control features, the fact that it got about 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour is fine. You know, I think in better weather, I could have hit at least three and maybe a little bit more than 3 miles per kilowatt hour. So it's not the most efficient EV on the market, but it's adequate. Um,
Yeah.
Personally, I think, you know, if someone was considering this, I would recommend opting for the touring, or maybe even the EX. You know, if you don't need the all-wheel drive, you know, go with the front drive models. You know, get the 20. I think they're 19-inch wheels. I think on those, they're still plenty big. You get a little bit more range with those, and uh, you know, they're a fair bit cheaper. You know, the Elite does have heads up display in it, which is nice, but not essential. Um, the EX starts at $47,000. It is eligible for the $7,500 tax credit for as long as that remains
Get
available.
it while you can.
Yes, the touring starts at 5170 or 51,700. The Elite jumps all the way up to 57,900.
Oof, that's a jump.
Um, you know, given, you know, the predominantly hard plastic surfaces, the piano black, you know, the Prologue is nice, but it doesn't feel particularly premium. And 58 grand, not including delivery, is kind of pricey for this thing.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so if you're, and you know, these are actually selling pretty well. Honda is, you know, since they launched it in June, already sold, like through last month, already sold 18,000 of them, which is more than GM has sold of Blazers or Equinox yet. So it's actually doing pretty well in the market, but I'm guessing that the mix is probably more biased towards the EX and maybe the touring, you know, the mid level touring.
Mhm.
The Elite, I don't think is worth the money. You know, I think that's too much money for what you're getting here. You know, in terms of range and performance and just, you know, kind of the feel of it. But the touring, you still get leather interior. You get all of the ADAS features. There's no Super Cruise available on the Prologue. You can get that on the ZDX if you want that. Um, so yeah, I think, you know, go for an EX or a Touring instead, and get, you know, save the money, get the $7,500 tax credit. You know, the EX with the tax credit, you know, you're looking about $40,000, which is, you know, again, I mean, it's 40 grand is still a lot of money, but it's not crazy expensive given what you're getting here, you know, and with that, you're getting closer to 300 miles of range.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So, and let me see. And, um, oh, you want to take a guess at
Oh,
destination?
d guess the destination. 11.95.
No, it was
Oh,
13.95.
geez, I went the wrong
It was
direction.
the same 13.95 as the
Thirteen
Odyssey.
ninety five. I'm like,
I figured it was a gimme this time.
I didn't want to say the same thing. It can't be the same. I gotta pick a different number. I don't know why I felt that way, but
So yeah, the grand total came to 59,750 for this Elite. I do like the color that was on this, which is they call it Snowfall Pearl.
what
Um,
color is that?
oh, that can't be right. That's not the Snowfall Pearl. Hold on, let me look at the building price,
What
because that I'm pretty sure that is a white, the
pearl?
Snowfall
I'm
Pearl.
looking prologue.
Where
Let's
where
think.
to go?
What color? Yeah, it's like a white. What color was yours?
No, it was blue.
Oh, yeah,
The one I
Snowfall
had.
Pearl is definitely this, it's actually very lovely white.
It was the Pacific Blue Metallic.
So okay.
Which is it's a great color. Really like the color on this. So the Monroney was wrong. Um, I think they attached the wrong one on here, Drive Shop, because they did also have a white one, but they sent me the blue one,
Okay.
which is good. I would much rather have the blue one than the white
I
one.
had a red one when I had it. It was bright red. It was very
Yeah, the scarlet red
yeah,
is a good
it was
color too.
color it was really it really popped. It was a nice color, so I liked it.
There's also the North Shore Pearl, which is sort of a teal green color,
Okay.
which is quite an attractive
That's
color
kind of
as
a thing.
well.
Have you noticed they're doing a lot of those, like, sort of tealish green kinda they're making a
Mhm.
comeback. Like, for a while, it felt like the color every OEM was adding to, like, "We're gonna do one that's an orange or burnt amber or
Yeah,
some kind of orangey shade." Now they're going for these, like, teal, bluish green things. I kinda like the switch.
yeah. So that's the Honda Prologue Elite.
Very nice.
All right, well let's stick with some other Honda news.
Honda
Let's
news.
let's go all Honda for the
All
first
Honda
part of
all
the
the
show
time?
here.
Okay.
Yeah. So this week, Honda announced two new models that are launching in the first part of 2025. Both 2026 model, or no, uh, actually,
Both
one's a
26.
26 model, one's a 25 model.
Oh, okay.
So we'll start off with the Honda Passport.
Which is the
So
26.
yeah, so there's a new Honda Passport coming early in the first part of the year as a 2026 model. And the current generation Passport launched in what I think 2019 as an offshoot of the Pilot, as a 2 row shorter version, based on the Pilot that was supposed to be a little more off roady. It was never really felt that off roady, although they did do the launch drive in Moab, which I thought was interesting.
Right, that's true.
But they uh, the new Passport definitely looks a lot more off-road oriented.
And it looks like they've given it, I mean, when you're looking about with the trail sport trim, excuse me,
Yeah.
it looks like they've made it a little more capable. They're saying it's the most off-road capable Honda SUV ever. So they have upped the ground clearance, they've given an off-road tuned suspension.
By about a half an inch.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, right? It's not like
It's
we've upped
not a
it
lot.
a half an inch, off-road suspension or off-road tuned suspension and AT tires, all-terrain tires, specially developed AT tires. So, I mean, I would like to think that they have made it more capable, but I
I
mean
mean, it does have skid plates to protect, like the
mhm,
engine, transmission, the fuel tank.
mhm.
It's got recovery hooks on it, so that when you get stuck, somebody can winch you out. So there it does have some more off-roadiness than the previous
And I
generation.
just read wait, I just was scrolling okay, broadest line of genuine Honda accessories ever, including robust rock sliders and the return of the stowable picnic table?
Yeah.
That was from was it the CRV that had that? Oh,
I think the first generation CRV
we
had that,
had
yeah.
the CRV with that. I'm like, "I love that little stowable." Every time, like, we were with the kids, we'd like, "Wait, I don't need a table. Hold on a second." Took it that's the best feature ever. Okay, now I'm all in. Forget all the ruggedness. You're bringing me back a stowable picnic table? I am in for this, Honda. I am here.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a more serious
It
off-roader than
does.
before, and, I watched, the TFL guys got to join, Honda for some of their final testing, about a month or 2 back, before they did the reveal. The car was still, I mean, you could tell exactly what it looked like, but it
Right,
was still wrapped in
right, right.
camo. And it certainly seemed to be more capable than the current generation Passport. Um, it's like the current gen. It's a 2 row, so it's a little bit shorter
Mhm.
than the Pilot. And it's I think it's pretty cool looking. There's 3 trim levels this time around. There is the RTL, which I'm not even sure what that is
I'm
supposed to
trying to figure
mean.
out what it stands for, and I can't find what it stands for here. I'm sure it's
Yeah,
something. I'm gonna continue to scroll and see if I can find it in this list.
it doesn't say anywhere in
It
the
doesn't?
press
Okay, I'm
release.
like, I'm not seeing the explanation. Okay.
The Trail Sport and the Trail Sport Elite, all on 18-inch wheels, which is nice. Instead of big, massive wheels, put them on reasonable size wheels. The RTL comes on all season tires, 265, 60 R18s, and then the two Trail Sports come on 275, 60 R18 general grabber all terrain tires. So if you do want to do anything resembling, actual off roading, you definitely want to go for one of the Trail Sports.
I mean, it feels
Uh,
like they did make it, roomier, like, they've all it looks bigger in the pictures, and it
yeah, it's
actually
a little
is
wider, a
a little
little
bit
bit longer
wider,
than
and
before.
here they're saying it has obviously the most room in its history, but they're saying that you could put 2 full-size adult mountain bikes in there with the front wheels removed, but still, when you think about the height of that, you know
Mhm.
what I mean, and how much space.
Yeah,
So it is a pretty roomy vehicle. So in terms of targeting the idea that you could go someplace and do some adventuring, have the oh so famous active lifestyle, and do some stuff with this, it does seem like they have made it with
I
that
prefer a
in
sedentary lifestyle, thank you very much.
mind. So this is not for you. Well, I do too, but I just that's why I have the picnic table. I'm
Mm.
going to sit at the picnic table
Ah,
and I'm going
okay.
to have a snack. So join me, Sam. Um,
I'm there. We'll have
Okay,
some cookies.
we're good. We'll have some cookies on a little table. We're in. We got this.
Yeah,
But no, it does look good. Actually really like the sort of, I guess, more rugged styling that they've done. They don't call this neo rugged; it's just straight up rugged. So I like what they've done with this. I think it's good. I think it's a good style, and I think people are kind of right now. That's sort of the thing to get that sort of off road look, no matter how much you use it. That more burly. It's not sleek and sporty. It's more like rough and ready, and it definitely has that first
yeah.
impression in the pictures that they've shared so far.
The engine is still a 3.5 liter V6, but now instead of the long running single overhead cams, it's got dual overhead cams, which gives it 5 extra horsepower. So you're up to 285.
Ooh,
Still the same 262 foot pounds of torque. Um, but you do get a whole 5 more horsepower.
I mean, 5.
Um,
There you
at, at,
go.
at a 10-speed automatic. And then on the rear axle, they've got their torque vectoring IVTM4 all-wheel drive system. So this is basically the dual clutch system that they have used on Acuras. On Acuras they call it super handling all-wheel drive
Mhm.
for torque vectoring. So they've got a clutch on either side of the differential that can direct some or all of the torque to one side or the other based on where it's needed. On the sporty Acuras, they do that to put a little more torque to the outside rear wheel, so that it helps push the car around, helps it turn in better. On this one, it's programmed a little bit differently, more to put the torque where you need it for grip, for off roading, rather than trying to help the car turn in at all. And So this kind of takes the place of having a locking rear differential. They can use this the way you would normally use a locking diff on some other off road vehicles. Um, and then it goes on sale, I believe, in the spring. The
Does it
new
say spring?
Let's
Hold on.
see.
Wait, scroll bottom, scroll bottom. Um,
Uh,
does it say?
let's
Built in Alabama. I don't see a date when it says it's going on sale. I see where it's being built.
I thought it said. No, I could be wrong. Well, it goes on sale sometime in 2025.
Okay. So, sometime next year, folks.
Yeah. So that's the new Passport, and hopefully this won't be as bad as the first two generations of Passports. Are you familiar with Honda's original SUV, the original Passport?
No, when was that?
This was in the 90s.
I did
They
not know
launched the
that.
original Passport in 19. It was their first SUV, and like the Prologue,
Yeah.
they relied on a partner to produce it for them.
Uh-oh.
In this case, that partner was Isuzu, which of course was at the time also an affiliate of General Motors.
Oh, goodness.
So kind of the Honda GM relationship goes back decades. Um, but the original Passport was a rebadged version of the Isuzu Rodeo. And actually, the first two generations of Passports from about 92 to like 2001 or 2002, when they launched the Pilot. Once they launched the Pilot, they dropped the Passport. But the original generations of Passport were based on the Rodeo, which, let's just say, was a really terrible vehicle to
Not
drive.
a great idea. Not a great one. Not one of the
Ooh,
better.
it um, it had one of the highest propensities to roll over of any vehicle I've ever encountered.
You
Yeah,
didn't actually roll it.
I did.
Man.
I That was as close as I ever got to rolling a vehicle.
Wow.
The back in the mid '90s, they were Isuzu was going to be producing that vehicle for several of their partners. In addition to Honda, they were also going to do a version of it for Opel and Vauxhall in Europe as the Opel Frontera. And when I was working for Kelsey Hayes at the time, I was working on ABS for this vehicle in like 92 to about 94, 95. And spent a lot of time driving these things. And yeah, they were kind of scary.
Wow.
In the span of about a year and a half, I think we had about I think we had like 5 or 6 rollovers with those
Oh
things.
my gosh, that's a terrible
And
record. Holy crap.
yeah, I came very close to rolling one when we were testing out at Chrysler's Chelsea Proving Grounds, and yeah, I just managed to hang on to it before it went over.
Oof.
Um, but one friend of mine, one colleague of mine, was injured. Most of the others there were no injuries, but one colleague was injured when he rolled one over.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, hopefully this will be just a little bit better than that one.
yeah, I'm fairly confident it will be much better.
Yikes.
All right. So that's the Passport.
Okay.
The other new vehicle announced this week by Honda is actually a new model for the Acura lineup.
Yes.
It's the new Acura ADX, which is a compact luxury crossover.
Which is new.
Uh,
It's the first ever
yeah,
ADX.
it's the first ever ADX, and the ADX is basically a rebadged, restyled version of the Honda HRV.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I guess it is. Wait, it has to drive better than that, though.
Well, we'll find out in time, I
I
guess.
would hope. I mean, I'm looking at this turbocharged performance, and I'm like, "That's not HRV." I just don't like the HRV.
Yeah.
I feel
I have not actually had a chance to drive an HRV, so I don't know.
well, you're not missing a lot.
But I mean,
It's just
this is
very you know what it is? It's an affordable, tiny little crossover that drives like one. How's that?
yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I mean, the HRV, the current generation HRV is based on the Civic platform,
Mhm.
and I'm pretty sure this is as well, because I'm pretty sure it's the same wheelbase as the HRV.
And they're gonna have an
Um,
A-Spec
uh,
and an A-Spec with advanced package, so they're doing all the fancy that Acura normally does.
yeah, the HRV I think is a 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. This has the 1.5-liter turbo that you find in Civics with
So
how
it'll be
many
more
horsepower?
fun. This will definitely be
Yeah.
more fun.
Does it say how
I don't
much
think it gives you
power it makes?
horsepower. It tells you what it is, type I don't see
Yeah.
a horsepower figure in here yet, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, in the Civic, in the various, iterations of the Civic, it makes anywhere from 175 to 200 horsepower, which is pretty decent.
Yeah.
Yeah, uh, that's what we have in our Civic. Our Civic has 175. Like the SIs do about 200 horsepower. So it's it's a decent, it's a nice engine. I like this engine.
Mhm.
Like I said, we've been driving one for ooh, 7.5 years now,
Okay. So there you
and
go.
have no complaints about the powertrain. Uh, Unlike in the Civic, it looks like it's not paired with the CVT,
Which
and
is
and
nice. Yeah.
yeah, I think, let's see, where does it say transmission?
No, it is CVT.
Oh, is it? Oh,
It
okay.
is. There's drive modes.
Yeah.
There's different drive modes depending on which one you get.
Oh,
There's
yes.
a comfort, snow comfort, normal sport, or then the A specs get also an individual. So they get 5. So they let you play around with the drive modes. That's where you're seeing numbers. But yeah, it is a CVT, unfortunately.
Okay.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, let me see. Let me pull up the HRV specs for comparison.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
wonder
the HRV is the 2-liter naturally aspirated 4, which is the base has been the base engine in the Civic for a while. So this has got more power. So it's probably going to be closer to 200 horsepower.
this might be a little more
Uh,
peppier. It says it's
yeah,
engaging. Don't lie to me, Honda.
yeah. So it's the same 104.5-inch wheelbase as the HRV. So yeah, so this is based on the HRV platform, but with some extra stuff.
Mhm.
So hopefully it's tuned to be a little more fun to drive, especially the A spec.
I mean, normally the A specs are, I mean, they look they normally give little exterior enhancements to those too that make them
Hmm.
look kind of fun, so they look the way they drive. I hope they do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Um, and I like Acura's current design language. It's good.
Yeah, I do
So,
too. I'm sure this is gonna look good. I mean, I like their design. I'm when you say HRV, I'm like, "Oh, no, I don't wanna drive like that." But that, like, scares me a little bit, but I bet it's gonna drive better than that. That's my theory, and it's
uh,
also Honda versus Acura. They do things a little differently, so,
yep. All right. Um, let's see. Uh, have you ever had your catalytic converter stolen?
Knock on wood, I have not ever had my catalytic converter stolen.
Well, a lot of people, especially Prius owners, get theirs stolen. Um, it, they're that's one of the biggest things with Priuses, especially.
Why
Is
Priuses?
I'm not sure. I suspect it probably has to do with the way it's mounted. It's
It's
probably easy to
somehow it's
get at.
really easy to get to. It must be just like, "Hey, if you want one, here's a Prius."
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting details when they launched the new generation Prius last year, that they now offer. It's been stuff like this has been available in the aftermarket for several years, but Toyota now offers as a dealer installed accessory a catalytic converter shield, which is kind of like a skid plate on an off roader.
Uh-huh.
Basically, another piece of metal that's bolted on below the catalytic converter to make it a little bit harder to get the catalytic converter out,
Okay.
because the those that the thieves that steal catalytic converters. I mean, the reason they steal them is because they can get several $100s for a catalytic converter because of
Right.
all the catalytic converters are pretty expensive to replace if you have to replace one.
Yeah.
And a lot of shops, a lot of unscrupulous repair shops, will offer you a cheaper option than the original factory one,
Mhm.
um, that it has been absconded with from another vehicle that's out there
Absconded
somewhere.
with. I like that description. Absconded with.
So there's quite a bit of value in these things, and so Toyota started offering, as a dealer installed option, a catalytic converter shield, and Motor Trend decided, for their long term Prius Prime, to get one of these and get it installed, and they've been quite happy with it.
Okay.
No
Well, they
no
still and
no
it's been
complaints about it.
stolen. I guess if it's not stolen, it's working, right?
Yeah, because the thieves that steal these things, they get under there with a reciprocating saw, and they can usually get these things off in under a minute, if they're unprotected.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can see in the photo in here how easy it is to access. A lot of vehicles, a lot of newer vehicles, the catalytic converters are actually mounted right up by the exhaust manifold, because the way these things work, is they don't actually start to be effective at removing pollutants from the exhaust stream until they reach a certain temperature. And so in the last 10-15 years, automakers have started mounting them right up against the exhaust manifold. So they're getting the
Oh, so they work more
exhaust when it's
quickly.
at its
Okay.
hottest.
Yeah.
So they heat up faster. And um, for some reason, Toyota does not do that on the Prius. It's mounted down below, and it's very easy to get at, which is probably one of the reasons why they get stolen a lot.
Yeah, and that
So
picture, I don't know I mean, this is something I've ever actually really looked at a catalytic converter, but in that picture, it looks like just like, "Hey, right here," like, you just be able to grab it, boom, boing, yoink, and there it is, it's yours now.
yeah. And I've seen, there's one company, whose name escapes me right now. They make a setup which is actually basically a set of steel cables that wrap around and make kind of a cage around the catalytic converter, make it really hard to remove it. This one, is a little simpler. It's made by a company called Miller Cat, and it's basically just a steel plate that bolts onto the bottom of the floor pan below the catalytic converter. There's actually two versions. An aluminum version, and a stainless steel version. The stainless steel version's a little more expensive. It's for the Prius, it's $200. For the aluminum version, it's $150. If you're going to get this, you might as well get the steel one. But they also offer one of these for the Tacoma, the new Tacoma, for $250 or $320. Um, Motor Trend's been driving theirs around for about 6 months, not noticed any rattles, had not had any issues with it. So if you live somewhere where catalytic converter thefts are a problem, you might want to consider investing in one of these.
There you go, something to consider.
Yeah. All righty. Um, let's see. Dodge. We mentioned that you drive a Charger
I
earlier,
do, yes.
and
It's
we've
crazy. I
been.
saw this story. I can't believe
I'm not terribly surprised.
some of them have crazy markups. That's why they're still sitting there. So the deal is they still have, I think, 5,600 roughly Dodge Chargers and Challengers.
Oh, the old generation Chargers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
still hanging out. And now they're fast tracking a gas powered charger production because of a demand. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, last year, before they ended production of the previous gen Charger, they ran overtime and built up because they knew that the new Charger wasn't going to be arriving till towards the end of this year, and so they built up inventory of Chrysler 300s and Chargers.
Mhm.
That's why there's still a bunch of them sitting around on
Yeah.
dealer lots. Uh, the back last spring when they finally gave us details on the new Charger, the Charger Daytona, which is the electric version, they also finally confirmed that there will be a gas version of this as well with the Hurricane 3-liter inline six. And that version was not supposed to launch until middle of 2025 or second half of 2025, and they apparently pulled it ahead by about 5 months. So it should it should be launching sometime in the spring or early summer instead. But the the electric Charger Daytona should finally be launching soon as well. I don't know about you. I just got an invite from Dodge to go drive this thing.
Yeah, I think, we're gonna have someone from else from Carbuzz going to drive that one. So, yeah, that's happening. So we'll have
Finally,
yeah, finally.
maybe they'll finally do the Wagoneer S as well.
One can only hope.
Have you heard anything new from your dealer?
Um, maybe? Ask me
Okay,
again next week.
okay. So if the idea of the electric Charger Daytona doesn't work for you, but you want a new charger, there will be a reasonably high performance gas version coming middle of 2025 as well.
There you go.
All right. Speaking of high performance vehicles,
Mhm.
um, Teslas, they're pretty fast. But one of the problem with Teslas and also an increasing number of other vehicles in recent years has been a move away from mechanical door switches, door latches. Just something you can grab and it mechanically releases the door, and so you can
Mhm.
open the door. Seeing more and more cars with some sort of electronic mechanism to unlatch the door. Um, on the outside of the car, that's allows them to make a sleeker design, without traditional door handles, or have some sort of door handles that hides away, so less aerodynamic drag.
Right?
Allows for a cleaner design on the inside. Problem is, if the power that powers that circuit goes away, um, how do you open the door?
Yeah. They're all supposed to and if you don't know how to open the door, if you're not quite sure how to do this, and if you don't know yeah, it causes problems.
Yeah. All the or well, let me rephrase that. Most cars that have such electronic door latches have some sort of mechanical backup to that something that you can pull to mechanically open the door and
Mhm.
unlatch the door. Um, on Teslas, on the Model 3 and the Model Y, on the front doors, it's relatively straightforward to find that. There's a lever that you can pull down in the lower part of the door. Of course, you still have to know where that is.
Right.
Um, and the bigger problem is on the back doors. On the Model Y and Model 3, that emergency release There's a pocket in the door, and then there's a piece of like carpet or something along the bottom edge of that, to give it a nice clean look. And if you drop stuff in there, so it doesn't rattle around too much. If if you get into a car crash and the car loses power and the electronic latches don't work, you have to pull out that piece of carpet, and then there's another tab that you have to pull up, and then underneath that is the mechanical release. Some newer Model Ys and Model 3s don't actually even have that mechanical release. So even if it does have it, you still have to know where that is, how that how to get to that. And if you get into a crash in an emergency situation, the last thing you want to be doing is looking up, trying to figure out how to open the damn doors.
Right.
So, if you buy a car or you get into a car that has any sort of electronic door latches, and like for example, uh, several Lexus models now, like the new RX,
Yeah.
has electronic door latches, and various other vehicles do. If you get into a car that and you notice it's got electronic door latches, look around and see if you can figure out, before you go anywhere, figure out where the mechanical release is, because if you need it, you don't want to be looking for it in an emergency. You want to know where it is right away.
That's just it. It's there. You can find them all. And when you're just sitting there calmly in your driveway looking for this stuff, it's super easy to find. When there's a moment to rightly panic because something has gone horribly wrong, then that's not when you want to be trying to figure this out. So, definitely something to check out before you need it. And hopefully you never need it, but definitely something to check out before that so that you're not confused should you need it.
Yeah, and the reason this comes up, I've got a link in the show notes, to an article by Dr. Phil Koopman from Carnegie Mellon University. Dr. Koopman is expert on automotive safety, uh, and so he wrote about this. But what brought this up was Wednesday of this week. There was a crash in Toronto with a Model Y, lost control, hit a pillar, and four people. It caught fire, and four people were died in this fire because they could not get out of the vehicle.
Yeah.
There was a fifth passenger that was able to get out and was rescued after onlookers smashed a window and dragged them from the wreckage. But
Oof.
once they got that person out, the fire escalated so quickly they could not get the other four people out. And so, you know, automakers really need to start rethinking, how they're doing some of this stuff, using software, using electronics for things that have basically worked for decades, for no good reason. Just like, stop, think before you do this.
Yeah.
Is this really a benefit to anyone? And I think, in a lot of cases it's not. Just keep it simple. And make it so people can get get out of the car in an emergency.
Because the thing is you do panic, like, even when you know how this
Mhm.
stuff opens, you know how it opens, you play with it before time, you're like, "Okay, this is super easy, I know what to do if something goes wrong." But then when something does go wrong, I mean, face it, most of us panic. You have that moment you forget, people go to get out of the car and they forget to take their seatbelt off, like, you panic, like, about things that you need to know. So it really is important to make sure that yeah, I would like to see automakers really, really, really pay attention to that because clearly people in the heat of the moment can forget and not know how to do things, and it can cost lives, which isn't great.
So, who do you think makes the safest cars on the road?
Who do I think makes the safest cars on the road? I don't know, Sam, you tell me who makes the safest cars on the road?
Well, I mean, a lot of automakers like to brag about their safety ratings.
Yeah.
Tesla has done pretty well over the last decade with their crash safety ratings. They've
Mhm.
generally gotten pretty high
They
scores
do get
on
very high
crash
scores.
safety.
I remember the roof thing, they couldn't crush the roof once.
Yeah,
There was a roof crusher that it broke the roof crushing device because the roof
yeah.
was too strong. I remember that.
So, um, Tesla vehicles generally do quite a good job of protecting their occupants in the event of a crash.
Yeah.
Of course, You still have to be able to get out of the vehicle after the crash, but that's, we
Details.
just talked about that.
We did.
Um, but the question is, the the can the bigger issue is, can you actually, what can you actually avoid crashes? And Tesla makes a lot of claims, that their autopilot and their FSD systems, make their vehicles less prone to crashes. Um, that is, the statistics that they release about that are extremely incomplete and selective.
Mhm.
And it's, very hard to actually compare the actual relevance of their statistics, because I'm pretty sure that, because they claim, that, per miles driven, compared to the entire vehicle fleet, or well, what we assume is the entire vehicle fleet, which includes many vehicles that are 15, 20, 30 years old,
Right.
that don't have a lot of the safety features that are on modern cars, and also, tend to be worn out and more likely to be in crashes. Um, and so they compare them to an unknown baseline and claim, that their vehicles are safer.
Right.
The folks at IC Cars recently did a study. They pulled a whole bunch of data from the U.S. Fatal Accident Fatal Analysis Reporting System, what's called FARS, which is put out by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. It's a pretty remarkable database of all kinds of information about crashes. Um, and if you're looking for crash data, crash statistics, there's a lot in there. It's not complete, but there's a lot in there. And what they did was they actually compared um, vehicles from all the major manufacturers that are fairly modern, vehicles from model years 2018 to 2022. And so they were all, because they're all, similarly new, have similar types of safety features. It's a more relevant comparison. And then they looked at, the likelihood, or how many crashes, how many fatal crashes there were normalized per billion miles driven. So obviously, a manufacturer doesn't sell very many vehicles. It's going to be fewer miles driven. So
Mhm.
you gotta compare, normalize it all that way.
Right, right.
Um, Turns out that when they looked at this for all these different manufacturers, Tesla's had the highest fatal crash rate at 5.6 fatalities per billion miles driven.
Oof.
Kia came in second at 5.5, Buick 4.8, Dodge at 4.4, and Hyundai at 3.9. The overall average was 2.8. Um, so that puts Kia, or puts Tesla at twice the average for that time period for vehicles from 2018 to 2022 model years.
Which is not
Um,
great. And they're saying that
no,
the thing of it is, like we were saying earlier, that they're technically safe. Like, their safety ratings are good. It's not like a fault in that they aren't doing what they're supposed to during the crash. It's more it's other factors that are causing it to have a higher death rate.
yeah, and most likely, this probably has to do with misuse of driver assist systems. Because Tesla so heavily promotes their autopilot and FSD systems
Mhm.
on their vehicles. Uh, they I think there tends to be a much higher rate of misuse of those systems. So people assuming that the systems are more capable than they are, and because they're not paying attention as much as they should, and Tesla doesn't do a very good job of driver monitoring on their vehicles to ensure that people don't misuse the systems. um, the, they're more likely to get into crashes and get into serious
Mhm.
crashes. So even though the vehicles are capable of providing very good protection, because they are misused more often in ways that they're not designed for, not intended for, they're more likely to get into crashes that lead to fatalities.
Yeah. So I guess the thing to sort of it's damning. Those are damning results. But if you have a Tesla and you're driving it the way it's supposed to be driven and you're not relying on it to do things that it's not intended to do, then theoretically you wouldn't be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and
If you're
if
driving the
you
right,
use it properly
yeah, if you use it
and pay attention, then you should be quite safe.
mhm.
You know, the vehicles are designed to provide very good protection. But, you know, if you're not paying attention, if you're sleeping, you know, or dozing off, or, you know, texting or watching a movie, or worse yet, you know, climbing out of the driver's seat and getting into the back seat, you know, you're not buckled up, then you're going to be more likely to die in a Tesla than in any other brand of vehicle built recently.
So I think it's probably the nature of, I don't know, it says something about Tesla drivers more than the cars, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It absolutely is
You can,
about the
yeah.
drivers and the way the drivers are using the vehicles.
Yeah, so if you're, so as much as it's a horrible, like, number, if you're driving a Tesla and you're following the rules, you're good to go. If you're driving a
Yeah.
Tesla and you're pushing it, you're about to become a statistic.
Yes, absolutely. So please, you know, pay attention. You know, there is no true self-driving system that you can buy from any manufacturer today.
Mhm.
If, you know, whatever you are driving, you must pay attention, watch the road, and, you know, you are responsible for what that vehicle does. You cannot take a nap. You cannot text. You cannot go to sleep. And, you know, unless you're riding, you know, in a Waymo robotaxi in San Francisco, Los Angeles, or Phoenix, you must pay attention
You
when
have
you
to
are
pay
behind the
attention to
wheel,
the road. Yeah, don't just,
no matter what you're driving.
like,
And
and
if
that's, I
you,
think, what, and that is generally, that's why Tesla gets in trouble. People don't pay attention. People
Mhm.
think that it is, you can just doze off despite whatever warning, despite whatever they call it. You can't. People, you still are driving a car. You're still driving.
Yeah, absolutely. So please, everyone, pay attention out there. Be careful out there.
Yeah, be careful.
All right, let's see. Jaguar. Back in June, I had a chance to I spent some time with the folks from Jaguar at the Formula E race in Portland. And there's an interview, you know, there was a roundtable session with their managing director that we have. Um, and the uh, the first their first of their new lineup of electric vehicles is coming later next year, and the first images have been published of this thing. It's a four-door GT car. Actually, we're going to see a concept version of this in a couple of weeks. They're supposed to unveil it in December.
Hmm.
Um, but you know, the prototypes are running around. What do you think of this?
I mean, it's hard. It's so camouflaged, especially the back. It's a little hard to see what they've done. Like, I feel like they've futzed around with stuff to really hide it back there. But when you're looking at, like, from the side, you're looking at the front part of it, I think it looks good. I think it
Yeah,
could
I
be
mean,
interesting.
it is kind of hard to tell very much from what we can see so far on this prototype. You know, it's going to be, you know, a fastback four-door sedan. It's got a pretty long hood.
Well, that's the thing.
You know,
You
it's
can, like,
got
the back half, I feel like, is really hard to read. I can't, for some reason, I can't figure it. But the front half of it, you can read a little bit better. And that, like, with that really long hood like that, and it looks very wide from the
yeah,
front, it's very bold. I like how it looks. Like, okay, if I just chop it off right there, that looks pretty good. I can't figure out what's happening in the back, and they're doing that on purpose because that can't really look like that. So, like, but from the front, I think it looks really good that what they're letting us see. Because face it, they didn't want us to be able to figure that out. They'd make that look weird too, you know? But I think it looks, I like where it's going. I like where it's going. I have high hopes here. I think it could be really good. What do you think, Sam?
yeah. I mean, I think, you know, I think this is something. I'll be very curious to see what they do with the front end. You know, because this prototype, you know, has a piece, you know, that's bolted onto the front end to make it look like a Jaguar grill.
Right.
You know,
But
obviously, as an EV, it's not going to require that, and probably
right.
not going to have that. So I'm going to be curious to see the details of what this thing looks like without the camo. Um, but I think, you know, the overall proportions are pretty interesting. You know, it definitely looks like a high performance GT car.
Yeah, it does. I think this is a good good little precursor. I look at them like, okay, this bodes well for Jaguar. I like how this is looking. Just don't mess it
Yeah.
up when you take all that camouflage off.
All right. Lexus, has their launched their first EV last year, the RZ 450e. Um, I think I think I'm safe in saying that it underwhelmed pretty much everybody.
Accurate. I think that's probably accurate. I think you're very safe in saying that.
Yeah,
Sadly,
not
yes.
not great range. The design. I mean, design is obviously a matter of taste,
Right.
but it was kind of expensive. Didn't have tremendous range, um, and it was only available in all-wheel drive, um, and had decent performance, but otherwise, yeah, it was disappointing.
Yeah.
Uh, well, they are for 2025. They're adding a new variant, the RZ 300e, which dispenses with the rear axle motor,
Mhm.
goes front wheel drive, so 201 horsepower on the front wheels, and that bumps up the estimated range to 266 miles for the base version with 18-inch wheels.
Okay.
With the 20-inch wheels that are optional, that drops it back down to 224
So
miles
don't do
again.
that one.
Yeah.
I feel like
Um,
224, it's funny, like 300, I feel like is the magic number that everyone's kinda trying to hit. You get to 300
yeah.
and suddenly it's like, "Oh, it's fine. We can all do it." 224 sounds scary to me. I mean, I'd never drive 224 miles in a day, Sam, unless I'm, road tripping, but still I'm like, "Oh, that's not enough." It makes me
Yeah.
anxious.
And I think it makes a lot of people anxious. I mean,
Yeah.
realistically, it should be enough for most people, but you know, I think especially when you're paying this kind of money, I think people want more. And there are a lot of cars, at similar price points that do offer significantly better range.
Mhm.
So, the 266 is adequate.
Right.
I think that'll be fine for most people. And really the 201 horsepower is fine. I think people will be satisfied with that. So let's see. Where is it? Do they have the price here? This shares its platform with the Subaru Solterra and the Toyota BZ4X. Um, let's see.
Why am I
Price.
seeing pricing for additional charges and I'm not seeing straight up price? Am I missing it?
Oh, here we go. Starts at $43,975.
There we go. There you go at the bottom, okay.
Yeah. Or at the very top. It's in the three
I
bullets
was
at the
going
top.
down. I was going down and seeing all these other
Yeah.
prices. So 43,970 now I find it you 43,975 for the cheapest version of this, but it goes up to 53,905, which is more than the base 450e.
Yeah. But that base 450e is with the 18-inch wheels. So that's
Right.
probably the 20-inch front wheel drive with 20-inch
Yeah.
wheels. So if you want the 450e with 20s, it's going to be more expensive.
It still get you in. So yeah,
Yeah.
so it's
And
it's a little cheaper to get into it than the like what $5,000, 4, 5, 6,
yeah.
7, 8, doing the math. 5 grand
And
cheaper.
and one thing that Lexus does do with the RZ is they have the Lexus Reserve program. So if you buy or lease an RZ, you can get up to 30 complimentary reserve days for basically you get a free rental over the course for up to 30 days free of charge over the course of 3 years, first 3 years. If you're taking a road trip and you're not comfortable with taking the RZ, you can get a free loaner from Lexus
That's kinda cool.
to use for up to a month.
If you're a little bit nervous, that's kind of a neat
Yeah.
little, like, backup if your comfort level isn't quite there yet, you know?
Hmm. All right. Let's see. The last couple of things involve jobs.
Job or lack of,
One, yeah. So one guy got a new job.
and 1,000
Uh,
people lost
uh,
a job.
yeah. So that is Jose Munoz, who has been CEO of Hyundai America for the last several years. He was named as the global CEO of Hyundai Motor Company. So he's going to oversee Hyundai and Genesis globally now.
So big
Um,
promotion, but he's done well with where he
mhm,
was, so it's not surprising. I don't think anyone's surprised, like, "Okay, sounds like a solid move, good move," you know?
yeah, and he is the first non-Korean to ever hold that job.
Which is a big deal for a company with a I mean, it's a Korean company and it's very proud of its Korean heritage, so that's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I've known a couple of previous CEOs and various people who have worked at Hyundai America over the years, and one of the challenges that I've heard about is that there's often been some friction between the North American staff and the executives in Korea.
Mhm.
They want things done a certain way, and it when if the Americans want to do something differently, a lot of times whoever's running the show in the U.S. Ends up being shown the door.
Yeah.
And for quite a while, especially during the 2000s, there was kind of a revolving door of CEOs at Hyundai America up until John Krafcek got that job
Mhm.
in I think 2010. He held the job for about 5 years. He had a pretty long run before he finally left. But yeah, I mean, at various times there's been a lot of turnover in that position. So the fact that they've seen that they've felt comfortable giving the job to Munoz as the global CEO is definitely a sign of confidence.
It is, and I'm hopefully he will do well, I'm sure he will, he seems to have a good handle on things, and hopefully the integration will go well having him into this new role. I think it'll be a good
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
On the other hand, a
Yeah.
thousand people got laid off from GM on Friday morning.
And it was
Um,
hard companies don't be such corporate things when you do stuff like this, like, be a little
yeah,
human when you do it, like, layoffs happen. This was not kindly done.
this was very poorly handled. Um, the people that got laid off got a text message at 5 a.m. telling them to go check their email. They got laid off by email
And
on
I know
Friday
at
morning.
least one of those people, because they were talking about it online, had been a GM employee for 39 years. Guy
Mhm.
gets a text message, "Check your email." Email's like, "Yes, so if you're getting this message, we're laying off people and you're one of them."
Yeah,
Like,
I know two people who got laid off on Friday. One was there for 25 years. The other one was 17 years. And yeah, same thing. That's just you know, come on. I mean, layoffs happen.
yes.
You and you know, there's not much you can do about it. But at least if you when you do it, you know, handle it more humanely.
That's the thing,
Don't
like,
just send an email.
nobody wants to do a layoff, nobody wants to have to do it. It has to be done, business is business, I get it. Company like GM, gigantic monster of a corporation, I get it. But, like, guys, don't forget that there's people on the other side of that hammer that you've laid down and, like, cut people out of the like, just I don't know, it just feels so heartless, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good to think, you put in that kind of time with a company, we all know that we're a cog and we all know that we're replaceable, but you don't have to be so obvious about it. Like, be a little human about it. GM, bad GM. That was terrible how they did that. Reading the stories, I just thought that come on, you can do better. You can do better than that when you're laying off people. Anybody, whether they've been there for 39 years or for a day, but come on, be nicer than that laying off people. Consider the fact they're humans and you've just laid them off, what, 2 weeks
Especially like
before
a week
Thanksgiving?
before
Yeah,
Thanksgiving. Yeah.
right before the holiday, and they're happy holidays, you lost your job. Come on. Be a little nicer about it, GM. Step up
Yeah.
your game. Be a little bit human in there.
All right. We do have one email question that I didn't put in the rundown,
I
but
see
I'll
it's
read
not
it
here.
here.
I see nothing in the rundown saying there was an email.
Yeah,
You just
it's
make
from
stuff up,
Rob
guys.
Johnson. He says, "Hi, if you can give me a short or long, if you want, opinion on these three EVs, that would be great." And this is on luxury EVs: BMW iX versus Audi Q8 e-tron versus Porsche Macan EV. Maybe what I'm looking for is, given the higher price of these, which one do you think is a better long-term option? BMW seems to have the most going for it. Porsche has great styling, but doesn't seem to be as techy. Any advice you have would be great.
Hmm. Okay, looking at those 3. Gosh, oh, that's
Well,
hard.
I mean, I would I would probably cut out the Audi first. It's basically the oldest of this group. It has the worst range. Um, it is arguably more attractive than the iX.
That's what I was say, it's more attractive, so styling, right? You're buying a luxury
Yeah,
car, it's more than just numbers too, it's how it looks. I sorry, BMW,
but
I don't think the iX is a great looking car, so I wouldn't.
it does drive really
It
well,
does,
and it's got good
it
range. It's
does, but
over 300
when you
miles of
stop
range,
to
which you're not going to get out of the Audi.
yeah. Yeah, but I like
And
the
then,
look of the Audi better, but you're right, it is probably the one to but the grill on that BMW,
yeah.
oh,
Well,
it's
just
not
like I've said before, just walk up to it from behind. And once you're inside, you don't even see the grill.
just always park it head in your garage so you never have
Yeah,
to walk by the front of it.
yeah.
That slays me. See, how a car looks is important to me. I gotta look at that thing
No,
every
I
single
don't
day,
disagree.
and that's hard for me. I mean, if it looked different, blindfold myself when I walk out to the car, I might pick that one. Um,
What about the Macan?
I
The Macan's the newest. I mean, it's
the
brand
the
new.
Macan is the newest, and I like the Macan. I mean, that
It's also smaller than the other two.
it is a little bit smaller. Gosh, I really like the Macan. Pricing wise, this is the most expensive of the lot too. Is the Macan the priciest? I think possibly.
Probably.
Let's see. I'm googling. Starts at 78,000. So it starts at 78
So
from there.
yeah,
So okay, so it's not insane. I mean, top trims 108, depending on how
yeah.
crazy you want to go. But if you're not going
And
crazy, I guess
and it's a Porsche, so I mean, if you're injudicious with the options list, you can easily get,
he's right. You just have to pay attention. Don't get
way
carried away
more.
with all the shiny bling. I think I would go Macan. I think I would go Macan. I like the Macan.
Yeah. I mean, the iX starts at
If
87.
you had to
So,
walk by this, like, look at the front of the Macan, look how pretty. Look at how
mhm.
lovely. It's like, "Hey, I'm a sexy little sports car and I'm an EV. Come drive me." The iX was like, "Ugh, ugh," like it got punched in the face. No, go with the Macan. BMW hates me now, but I like the Macan. I think I go Macan just 'cause I like how it drives, I like how it looks. Um, I like this vehicle. That would be my pick of the 3.
Yeah, I mean, the Macan is attractive. I would say it's the most attractive of the 3. It is on, the new PPE platform developed by Porsche and Audi.
Mhm,
So, it's got an 800-volt electrical system. It will charge much faster than the other 2 vehicles,
mhm.
especially the Audi. The Audi, is the oldest of these. It's got the oldest tech. The Macan's actually got, it's I would say it's probably as techy as the BMW
Yeah.
in many ways. Um, so I wouldn't rule that out without checking one out.
And, the
Uh,
Macan it's, currently on our list of, the finalists, or we call it best of, for, NACTOY. So there's or not yeah, not finalist yet, it's the best of 2020
yeah, the finalists
sorry,
are going to be
apologize.
announced later this
Finalists are
week.
coming, it's our best of 20 there's, like, 10 vehicles that are in the utilities, and the Macan EV is one of those vehicles, so I have it freshly in my mind too from having driven it, maybe a month ago? Not even. Um, at the drive, they had that. So I got some time behind the wheel of that, and I just so thoroughly enjoyed that vehicle. I loved it. There's some we get to drive all these vehicles around and like, "This one's fun, this one's fun." I'm like, "Can I just have this one again? Anyone waiting? No, no one's waiting. Bye." And just kinda took it for another lap. So I really liked it a lot. That'd be my pick.
Yeah, so, if you want something sporty, go for the Macan. The iX I think is bigger and roomier.
Mhm.
So if you need the extra space, at this point, I wouldn't even really consider the Audi.
Yeah.
It comes down to the iX or the Macan.
Yeah.
If the iX styling is something that you can live with, and you need something bigger,
Can live
it does drive really well.
it does.
I do like driving it. If you want something sportier, go for the Macan.
Yeah, if you want something that won't make you cry when you see the front end of it every time you go by, don't get the iX, go with the Macan, that's the reason, because you won't cry when you look at it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. This past week, I was lucky enough, I was invited to deliver the opening keynote at the Faceta World Mobility Summit, which was held at the GM Tech Center in Warren, Michigan. And I did a talk on Back to the Future, a brief history of electrification, which was a fun talk to put together. And I recorded it and I put it together with the slides, and it's available right now for patrons. So
Woo.
it's in the Patreon feed. I will put it on YouTube probably in another week or so. So for everyone else, you'll get, if you're not a patron, you'll get a chance to see it there. But I got a lot of good feedback on it, so I think might you might find it entertaining to listen to, and
Yeah.
see the slides that I put together for this one. But want to thank everybody who's supporting us through Patreon. Really appreciate you. And for the rest of you, please keep listening wherever you listen. If your platform of choice supports doing ratings, please help us out with a rating, preferably a good one. Uh, and keep sending in your questions. We love to answer your questions or listen to your comments. And I think that's it for this week. Anything else you got, Nicole?
No, and this week coming up is the Los Angeles International Auto Show, or whatever they're calling it these days. The LA Auto Show is coming up. So I'm going to be in LA, and the World Car Test Drives are happening. So I'm going to get to drive some cars, I hope, that we don't even have in the US. So that should be fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and we will talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.